what's the government doing to support those affected?
Well, you've heard from Rishi Sunak there. Firstly, can I just welcome his standing, along with the United States and other nations as well, to remain firmly behind Israel and its right to defend itself. It's clear to see, due to the scale of this terrorist attack and the horrific impact on civilians, why Israel is calling this their 9/11. The United States is moving assets into the area. I think we should be doing the same, because there's a real possibility that this could flame up and move out of control. Absolutely, terrorism must be defeated. Hamas and Islamic jihad must be neutralised. But I say this with caution. We'd be wise to learn from the past. We now appreciate some grave strategic errors were made, however well-intentioned, under the banner of defeating terrorism back in 2001. I'm in no doubt it's Iran that's calling the shots here. Such was the complexity of this operation. Hamas couldn't have done this without external support. I suspect Hezbollah in Lebanon was involved as well. And we've yet to see what they intend to do next. But Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas may be anticipating Israel's obvious response, namely an invasion, an occupation of Gaza, and therefore be ready to extend this fight into Gaza, bearing in mind that Hamas do not represent the Palestinians in Gaza. They don't care about the 2 million people living there. And clearly tensions are rising fast across the Middle East, even here in the UK as well. So I think it's important to recognize that separate to what Israel's plans are in retaliation, this is far from over. The prospect of miscalculation leading to significant escalation, potentially involving Iran directly, is huge as events ratchet upwards, with no single player able to control where this goes. If you look at Hamas's wider objective, they want to start a war so intense that it spreads way beyond the West Bank, Jerusalem, even involving Lebanon. So whilst we support Israel, we need to think carefully about how we proceed. This is the most dangerous period in the Middle East for generations.
Could not agree with you more, Tobias. And in fact, welcome to the show. We were talking yesterday about, this was almost done under the noses of a country whose, international security and surveillance is probably the best in the world. And I think we sat here yesterday and we thought there must be other countries involved. You talk about Hezbollah, you talk about Lebanon, you talk about Iran. I think you're absolutely right. So a very salient point you made there as well is that, Hamas is a terrorist group. They can't care about the 2 million people. You were saying earlier, many of them under the age of 20, 19, inside Gaza. I'd like your response on something else. People accuse me of BBC bashing. Overnight, the argument still continues because the BBC refuses to call Hamas a terrorist organisation, calling it a military organisation. What are your thoughts about that, Tobias Ellwood?
Happy to cover both those points. If you check on the government website, the UK government website, Hamas is registered, listed as a terrorist organisation. So if any media outlet is unsure, simply quote what the government has formally made. This was voted on in Parliament. Hamas is seen as the terrorist operation. I would like us to now go further and actually list the Iranian IRGC operation, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards there as well, because as you're implying, I believe they are behind this too. Big questions, though, for the Israeli intelligence services and indeed the military. Why didn't they understand what's going on? And again, this points to outside international help. If we turn the lens the other way around, are they now using some very secure modern technology to be able to communicate, to be able to plan over months, possibly years, to make this happen, that prevented Israel and their quite incredible intelligence services from understanding what's going on? Facts suggest other countries beyond Iran could possibly be involved as well. I simply speculate now here, but it's something that needs to be considered. I also throw in to the mix here, who else benefits from this? And careful what the words I use, but Russia clearly will benefit by the massive distraction this will yield on the West as we now turn our attention back to the Middle East, away from Ukraine, where we've been focused on for many, many months.
Tobias, as Jeremy said earlier, 50% of the population of Gaza are under the age of 19. Israel declaring a complete siege of Gaza yesterday, cutting it off from water, power supplies, and many attacks expected over the next few days. What measures, if any, can be put in place to evacuate innocent civilians, children from the region, considering its position? They obviously cannot escape through to Israel.
No, look at the map and you can see Gaza is a very small area. It's the size of the Isle of Wight. And it's got the Mediterranean Sea on one side, Israel on the other, Lebanon to the north, and you've got Egypt to the south. It's pretty much surrounded. The Golan Heights are now taken over by Israel itself. There isn't anywhere for those living in Gaza, the Palestinians, to go to. We need to be realistic about this. They will not be allowed into Egypt. And then we must recognize that it is run. The governance there is by Fatah, and they've made this open commitment to see Israel destroyed. That's different to Fatah that operates in the West Bank. They are more secular representation of the Palestinians, and it was always hoped that they would have greater influence on Hamas. Clearly, that isn't the case, and that's why I suggest this is very, very dangerous indeed. My concern is that we could radicalize more of those youngsters because of understandable but emotional responses that we're now going through in these very hours and days, as we absolutely rightly track down and neutralize the Hamas terrorism operation.
Tobias, I don't know if you heard in the last hour, or you maybe saw the slight part of the interview that we ran just then after 7. Georgia Barnett, a Jewish lady who spent the last 7 years living in Tel Aviv, back in London by default, really, because her sister was having a baby. You could see when you spoke to her the emotion and what this means to the Jewish community. But what really struck me, and I think Nick as well, was when she said, on the ground in Israel, the echoes of the past are resoundingly loud in our ears. And that is absolutely central to this, isn't it?
It is. And you sum up very well indeed the trauma that Israel is going through. For many, many years, they've lent on the fact they've had such a formidable military operation and an intelligence services that can watch their backs. And clearly what has happened here, because of outside help, because Iran is directly supporting Hamas, as it does with Hezbollah, as it does with the Houthis in Yemen, for example, the proxy influence of Iran is something that the West now needs to recognize why we did not more, do not more to challenge. I remember back in 2020, I think it was, President Trump, who I didn't agree with many of what he did, but he took out Soleimani, the head of the Quds force in Iran. That was the moment. He was the one that led the proxy influence right across the Middle East. His removal was the opportunity for us to quash and contain Iran's proxy influence. And we missed that opportunity. And here it is flaring up again.